those who may not know me, my name is Lori Power, and I'm a group benefit consultant. Every week, I do this Zoom cast in an attempt to bring conversation together. I want to talk about interesting topics, and I want to meet as many people as I can who have all of these interesting things to share. It's really my pleasure to have my friend Anthea come in and talk about the startup experience. I learned things about being an intentional entrepreneur. I have to say, before Anthea and I started talking, even though I've been an entrepreneur for over 20 years, I'm an accidental entrepreneur. I kind of just assumed everybody fell into it. That you just kind of, because if you would know ahead of time, why would you ever go down this road? Like, why would you put yourself through it? But Anthea did. So I want to start really, and Stephen had brought this up right away as well, is, he's going to be working with somebody first, build up some capital before he goes into that startup. Tell me about your journey. Before we get into 2S Water and what you do, tell me about the journey of that intentional entrepreneur.
Yeah, and I was lucky enough to be working in an environment where entrepreneurship was very much encouraged. My co-founder is a 10X entrepreneur, so we'd done it a few times. Some of those happened while I was with the company group. So we knew there was this idea that entrepreneurship was an acceptable thing to do. Being in Alberta, we were pretty heavy into oil and gas. So there was an opportunity where our existing companies were doing fantastic, and there was a will and a desire to get into another industry. And coming from this entrepreneurial background, I was excited to be a part of that and really push to see if we could move. So my co-founder and I decided we were going to start a company. We both came in with two different goals. The minimum requirements that we wanted to see in the business. I wanted to see an environmental overall driving directive, and my co-founder wanted to see monthly recurring revenue because it takes two different types to make a good business. So then we went out looking for a problem, and that's how we came across the issue that there is no real-time metal detection for water currently available on the market.
I love that when we were talking, Anthea. I love that you came to thinking, I'm going to start a business, but I have to have a business without having a vision of what that business is, which again struck me, that you came to it with a goal in mind, but not knowing what you were going to do. So you have those two goals. And you said something that I've used many times since we've had that initial conversation, is you said, love the problem, not the solution. So tell me about identifying that problem. How did that come to light?
So for us, as you said, we came with the intention of shifting businesses without a specific problem on hand, and that turned out to be a really good way to do it. We started searching around for a problem. We found a couple that we thought might be potential. We were really looking for a few parameters, which was, a big problem with a potentially large addressable market, no existing solution or a very insufficient existing solution, and something that we thought we could solve as well. It's no good if we can't fix it. So we looked at a couple, but this water treatment issue came up again and again and again to the top of the pile. Once we had determined that this was the one we were going to address, we started talking to people. So basically originally we were looking at the municipal market. Right now we're very focused on the mining market, but municipalities are where we first were focused. Things like Flint, Michigan, Walkerton, Ontario very much inspired us to get on the road. So we drove to every water treatment facility in the near area. We'd call them up and say, we'd like to talk to you about a new product we want to develop. And they would say every single time, I am absolutely not going to buy anything from you under any circumstances. But hey, do you want a tour of my water treatment facility? Because it turns out these guys are just sitting out in the countryside without much to do, and they love to have someone interested. So we'd drive out, we'd come and look at their water treatment facility. It would give us an hour of dedicated time with this person, where we could find out all about the issues that they addressed. We had the time to tell them about what we were imagining and determine if in fact there was a fit there. So we'd go in, they'd usually start out again, I'm never buying anything, but thanks for coming out. We go, that's great. By about halfway through, they'd be saying, oh, I actually get it. I think that would be useful. And by the time we were leaving the facility, they were usually saying, hey, can you drive upstream and sell it to the guys upstream too? Because I want to know when something hits their water treatment facility so that I can adapt my processes with 2 hours notice instead of the 10 minutes notice you're going to give me now, which is so much better than the 2 months notice I have currently.
Was it a shock? Was it, Was it something that you thought nobody had done yet?
So
Was that a bit of an eye opener for you? Because when we first met, I would have thought that was commonplace, right? We've all grown up with water treatment plants, so it's my assumption that that water is already clean.
and the water is clean. I will say, current water treatment does very well. But there is this information gap. We were also surprised that the information gap existed. I mean, part of why we started out on this big customer discovery process is we thought we'd done bad research. We couldn't figure out why we couldn't find the existing solution. So we wanted to ask these guys what they were actually using right now. And it turns out that 99% of the time, if you want to know the metals in your water, you're sending a sample to a laboratory. The only alternative is to build an in-house laboratory, which is of course massively expensive, but what big industries are doing because they need to have that faster feedback. So these companies, even with building an in-house laboratory, are getting data every 4 to 8 hours. And that's costing them millions. So really big issue that kind of managed to be swept under the rug because they had a good enough solution. You know, it was providing the data they needed, even if it wasn't at the speed that they needed it. Lots of excitement about potentially improving that though.
So now you've dedicated about 6 months, I think you said when we were talking about just going out, talking to people, identifying a need, and knowing that you now have the ability to fit that need. Many people, when I talk to them, they talk about that secret sauce, right? There is no secret sauce. You took a definitely opposite approach to that by saying that, yeah, there's no secret sauce. We want to tell you what we're doing and get your feedback. How did that impact your road forward for then moving into that next phase?
Well, it really gave us the knowledge of what people actually need. We went into it looking at a multi-element sensor. We didn't know what specifically we were looking at. By doing all that customer discovery, we managed to discover that metals were the big problem, where there wasn't an existing solution. A lot of the other things there were solutions for. So it really allowed us to refine that down into that first product that we wanted to bring to market and feel confidence that there actually was an alternative that we could bring forward. Hand in hand with that, it gave us the knowledge that there was a market when we finished, that we would be able to sell this. I mean, it's great for people to say that they want it, but actually being willing to buy it, that's why we did so many customer interviews and so many discoveries, because we wanted to hear that over and over and over again, and not just people saying, that sounds interesting, get back to me. We were waiting for that, I would like one, and I want you to sell them to other people I know too, because the value of having these out in the field is fantastic. So having that real validation that a need existed was so vital, because otherwise you're just making something on the hope that you'll find a market that actually.
Well, and as good friend Wayne Cotton says, there's no strategy in hope. So
Yeah.
that is not a business strategy. Take me through when you were out doing the discovery phase. You didn't stick to just one industry. You looked at a lot of variable industries, and then you came back with 4 main factors that you needed to make it viable to then start that next phase. Take me through that.
So yeah, we did look at a lot of different industries. I mean, part of the objective here was to make something that could be scaled and could apply in more than one vertical. So we wanted to make sure that we had applications in different industries and understand what the challenge was moving between those industries. Because selling to a municipal water treatment facility is very, very different than even selling to a mining water treatment facility. Like same processes, same groups, but very different companies that we're actually selling to. So understanding that there was a depth of market was important to us, and it turned out to be vital for our success. We didn't realize that we did as much customer discovery as we possibly could, but when push came to shove, the municipal market has a very low price tolerance and moves very slow, which is all things that you would like in your municipality, but not the best things for a first client base. But having that basis of knowledge, we knew the other industries that had the most potential pain point on this. And when it came time to pivot, which we had to do, it was vital for our success that we pivoted when we did. We had a top list of industries that we thought might have the problem. It really shortened the second round of customer discovery that we had to do, and allowed us to really set down now where we are on our ideal customer profile of an exact person in a company that will buy our first unit.
I like that. I like that working backward to identify who, not only the need, but who would be your customer and how to best suit that customer. I like that working back. At what point did you approach the university with starting to build your team? So now you've identified, you've met your criteria for moving in. You have the four factors on that move forward. At what point then do you start going into that R&D and approaching your team?
It was pretty early, actually. So part of what we did in the first 6 months was customer discovery. The other part we did was compulsively read publicized papers in water treatment, because the other bit that we didn't have was the solution. So we had to be sure we could solve the problem. So by the time we were done our customer discoveries, we also had what we thought was the right technology. So we took our paper down to the University of Alberta and found a professor and said, do you think we could make this into a commercial product? And so that was pretty much right after the 6 months. As soon as we'd said, yes, we have enough confidence that there is a problem that we can solve, and yes, we believe that we have found a solution that can be commercialized, then our next step was to go to the university and find professors who were willing to help us through that. Because our team didn't have that strong R&D background. We had a strong business background, but we didn't have the R&D team. So that turned out to be a really beneficial partnership. The professors found the concept entertaining, which is basically what you need to work at the university. You know, you need to capture the interest of the professors. We were open to publication. That turned out to be vital as well. That's how professors move their careers forward. So that partnership turned out to be really beneficial. And we spent 2 years in their laboratory developing our prototype, making sure it worked. We only left because COVID made us. So, or we'd still have our physicist in there.
Very good. Now, at what point then do you start the fundraising? And what does that look like? And we know there's a ton of fun in that.
Yeah, there is. So my co-founder is a clean generation older than me. He's got a really well-developed network. Our assumption was we could go to Tony's network and fundraise the money we needed. Turns out his network was pretty heavy into oil and gas, and the most common response we got was, I would love to cut you a check, and I will cut you a check the day I drill a hole. Which wasn't happening. This was, I mean, we really started this at the bottom of the oil crash in 2017. So that closed a lot of doors for us that we thought were going to be open. And doing that first fundraise really turned into a big matter of trust. The only people who came in because they had known Tony for so long and they had seen him succeed before, that they took a lark. The first investors wanted to know very little about it. They wanted to hear the verbal pitch. They didn't see much documentation. They heard us speak lucidly about the idea. They had faith in Tony and they put in money. And that was the only way we got it off the ground. We're lucky in Canada that there's a fair bit of grant funding that supported us and kept us going and allowed us to stretch that capital a lot farther. But if it hadn't been for that existing network of high worth individuals that had a trust factor, we would not be here. Absolutely not.
So is that something that you think is a common oversight when people are considering that startup position? You know, when you and I talked about it, you had said there were some things that happened along the journey that you had made some natural assumptions, but then had to go back and say, you know, I wish I knew. Let's highlight just a couple high level of those for when we meet our next intentional entrepreneur.
So I think you really nailed one of the biggest ones. Is we thought when we had a concept that we would be eligible for angel funding. So we went out and started talking to angels. They are supposed to fill that first gap. And we were routinely told no. We had at that point, when we went out for angel funding, we had a functioning prototype in our laboratory. So you could come look at it. It worked. It did what it was supposed to do. Angels in Canada told us a hard no. They would not be looking at us until we had revenue, which for us was too late. We needed more funding to get a commercial product that was ready to go into customers' hands. Especially in the mining industry, we're talking about very conservative groups. If you don't excel at those first deployments, which you've worked so hard to establish the relationships to get, you've just thrown away everything you've done up to date. So for us, excellence for out of the, like, I know that an MVP is important. It's important to do things in the least, with the least features and the least functionality possible. but it's also very important to make sure that in that least moment, the core competency you excel at. So when we went to our first round of investors, we were very surprised to hear that we were not yet investment ready when we thought we were. That led us to some desperately scrambling years. I have nothing but good to say about the grant network around Alberta, because we were at that point eligible for some grant funding. All that grant funding, though, is matching funding. So unless we came to the door with $1, they would not give us $1, which created another barrier. I mean, it was very difficult in the early days to get enough money to assure that grant funding would land our way. So it was very much a catch-22, and we were a long ways away from having revenue and really demonstrating. And the question that clients or the investors kept coming back with is, prove to me anybody wants to buy it. And we'd show them letters of intent, we'd show them emailed discussions, and they'd say, that's not enough, I need a check. And I get it, it makes sense, but it's an almost too high of a barrier for a hardware product.
I would think it's kind of a chicken and the egg situation, isn't it? Because you need the funding in order to place the product to prove that it's worthy. And yet, in order to get the funding, it has to be there and already proving that it's worthy.
Yeah, exactly. And even to this day, that's been the big challenge. We're very close to securing a chunk of funding now, and it's going to be a very much chicken and egg. We're also signing our first revenue in the next few weeks here. We're very far along the path there. So these things, I'm going to need that revenue to prove that I can get the investment to make that excellent first user experience so that I can get the referral clients, it's very much a set of dominoes that we're setting up, and any part of it that doesn't function perfectly can result in this not working out. Even though we have a solution, even though we know we have a solution, even though we know we have a market, there's so much more to it than that has to be done. So.
What are your top three? If I had to say your top three things that you have on the I wish I'd known at this stage because it would have impacted the next stage, what are your top three of I wish I'd known?
Well, of course, that first one regarding funding, that we were so, I wish I'd known exactly what a fundable company looked like before we went out. And I will say that's very market driven. So we are actually looking at fundraising in the United States because the investors there we find are more savvy and have more money to display. By the time we're ready for Canadian angel investors, we're also ready for US seed VCs, and they'll put in a lot more money. So it's a harder sell because you're in a different market, but that's the route we chose, which was, again, a high risk choice that we engaged in. So I wish I'd had a way better understanding of the ecosystem out there. I think we did a good job of customer discovery, but I think when it comes to starting a startup, that's often where I see most people fail. If you don't go out there and vet your idea in front of as many customers as you can, you're setting yourself up for failure. And everybody says that my idea is special and it's precious and I must protect it or someone will steal it. It's not. It's all about execution. You can give somebody else your idea, just hand it to them. Unless they're better at execution than you, they care more and they're going to try harder. It doesn't make a difference. You can still do it and do it better. And hand in hand with that, first mover advantage, way overrated. That's just a big education game that you have to play where you teach your customers how to that your product exists and is worth using, and then the second mover comes in and takes advantage of that. I take second mover over first mover any day of the week. I guess my third would be hire slow and fire fast. That first team is vital. Right now, we're at this stage where I am reliant on my team. I am the voice of the company. I'm the one who's out there with trying to find clients and trying to get us funding. They're the ones making the product that we're going to sink or swim on. If you don't trust them, if you don't believe in what they do, I'm lucky to have a fantastic team. But if I didn't, that would be the failing point. We'd go under because of that. So the strength.
I love that. That's a good message. Hire slow and fire fast. That is very good. I like that thought process.
I didn't coin it. We've been doing the Covergx program, which is a sales training program that a VC out of the United States puts everyone through. It's how they get their deal flow, which is a great way to do it. But they say that to us once a week. hire fast, fire slow, or hire slow, fire fast.
Find your happiness elsewhere, right? If you're not into the vision. How important has your network been through this last 3 years of moving and getting the processing and getting through these tough times? We've talked about mastermind groups. We've talked about how important has that been to you, being that face and the voice of the company?
Oh, I think it's vital. It's vital for a lot of reasons. This is a difficult job and it takes a lot of bravado and confidence, and having a strong network of people helps maintain that. People who believe in what you're doing help you believe in what you're doing. And I think COVID's all taught us that the echo chamber of one is not a happy place to be. You really want that external perspective of people supporting you, believing in you, looking at what you're doing and saying, yes, you can succeed. The skills that are available in that group. When I have a problem, I immediately reach out to my network because somebody knows either the answer or who knows the answer every time. Whether it comes down to an actual question or I need help with this or I need this skill set on my team, it's the network that comes to my aid immediately is vital to our speed is vital right now. So if I don't have that person in hand 10 minutes after I have the request, I'm in trouble. Like, that's part of my job is facilitating my team, and my network has been completely vital to do that. And then finally, opportunities. Having a huge network of people out looking, and when they see an opportunity in the mining sector, they think of me and they send it my way. That has been huge for us in front of getting in front of the right people and being there, because a simple webinar about the mining industry can bring people and executives from companies that I could never access before, and gives me the opportunity to send them a direct message to the chat, and usually lands a meeting. So just that occasional passing thought that people have of, maybe this is a good fit for Anthea, has saved us more times than I can possibly think.
This is the time to really pick Anthea's brain.
It wasn't so much a question, but she connected with my son. He's I'm being a bit facetious. He's still in school, but he is pursuing he's worked the last 3 summers in a row up in the Yukon for, see if I can remember the name. Archer Cathro is the name of the company. They're a mineral exploration side, but
I would like to talk to him.
I would be happy to set you up.
There you go, Lori. That's how it happens, right?
That's what we're here for.
He's the grunt, Anthea. He's the guy with the auger and the pick on his back.
Absolutely. You never know where the next connection will come.
Actually, the question I have, and this is a mystery to me completely, is like, how do you do the arithmetic to figure out, that, debt to equity and seed capital and angel money and sort of outside equity to your own equity, and how do you figure out, how that's going to work for you in terms of who owns the company?
There are better ways to do it than we did. I think when we did it, we kind of did like, that's where we want to be. So how we actually figured out our first capital raises and how much of the company we were going to sell was backwards. We said, we think we need 3 rounds of funding to do this probably, like our first friends and family, then a seed, then a Series A for growth. After that, we should be self-sustaining. We did a slight miscalculation. The actual number was 20%, but we figured it was 25% that people wanted to buy at each stage. If you contract any kind of VC, they're actually going for 20%. So we said at 25% per round, it's dilutive. So you add 25% instead of subtracting. That's about how many rounds we're going to do. This is about how much money we need. This is how much we'll end up with at the end. And therefore, this is how much we're selling in the first round, how much in the second round, how much in the third round. Really, really important to get those right. I don't think we knew how important it was in the early stages, because if you raise too much if you raise at a high valuation in an early round, then you have to down round, which means you lower your valuation, which means you've cost your existing investors money already. You're inviting new investors in at a lower valuation, and that can be death, especially if you want to go to a big VC later on. You have to explain why you had a down round. They are not going to be happy campers. So really important to make sure that your first valuation is wise, because that's the one where you're going to your friends and family and they're saying, I'll cut you a check and you tell me how much of the company I'm going to get, because they don't know either, right? I think we made a really big miscalculation on how much money we needed in retrospect, since it took us like a year longer than we thought it would. And I don't know how we would have done that better. Like, we ran the math that we had on hand and we made assumptions. And the old maxim turned out to be true, which is that you need 3 times the money you think you do. But I don't think that we could have gone to our first network and gotten 3 times the money we did. It just wasn't there. So did we do it right? No. Could we have done it another way? I honestly look back at what we did and think we did the best we could with what was on hand and what resources we had. So
thanks. Yeah, super helpful. It's a world I don't know anything about, and I appreciate your thoughts and your experience.
yeah, it gets scary, especially if you're in one of these companies that plans, like, the series letters go on indefinitely as far as I can tell. So if you're planning to do like an A, B, C, D, E, F, G, like, the amount of your company you're giving away in each round becomes a really big deal. And many founders walk away with almost nothing. Because when you start getting into the A, B, and C series, those are really savvy investors who have a portfolio and somebody else's money that they expect to get a return on, and they will wipe out you and your early investors to get their return if they have to. Some of them, I mean, they're not all super predatory.
But it's a business for them, right? I think that's important to remember, that these investors who attend to people who are startups, that is their business.
Yeah, absolutely. And they're working on the premise that they're going to run through a certain number of companies. They expect a certain number to fail, which, when you're getting in bed with somebody who thinks, there's like a 70% chance you're going to end up failing, and they're okay with that, that's a weird relationship. Like, everybody we're invested with now has 100% faith in us, because we've managed to do friends and family and people who, like, when we start bringing those institutional investors, it's important to remember that they are building a portfolio and they expect 8 of those companies to fail. They expect 2 to do okay and 1 to go bananas. That's how they come into it. So they have, and I think that's probably one thing I didn't properly understand, and I'm still trying to properly understand, is that group of people, while they exist to facilitate new startups, have their own objectives that are potentially not in alignment with what a founder wants. Even if a founder is on the same path, even if you're on that exit path, that you have this goal, build it big and sell it, they have their own objectives. And it's really important to remember that, I think.
Your number one advice as we close up here, number one piece of advice.
That if you're going to found a company, don't treat your idea like the best secret you've ever had. Go ask everybody, and ask them in a way that lets them truly answer. There's a book called The Mom Test that talks about how to get past the, like, is my baby ugly? No, of course not. No one's going to say that, right? Like, you have to find out before you put in dime one into development. At the end of the day, is anyone going to buy it? Because there's no point if you're looking at the end of the day with a great product and you're searching for a market. That's a terrible place to be. So market is number 1, then product, then everything else.
I love that. I love that. I loved how you said, there, like I've used the word no secret sauce, but get it out there, because execution and passion is what will cross it over the finish line, not necessarily that idea. I want to thank everybody for coming in today, especially you, Anthea. This has been such an engaging conversation. I love it. We always say to people when they come into the room, take time to connect with somebody you didn't know. Put up your email in the chat bar and have a virtual coffee, because the thing about this pandemic is we're here for a while, but if we want to absolutely grow our networks, then we have to put ourselves out there and have that virtual coffee. And I hope that I'll see everybody back next week. We're going to be talking about the quantum leap. So thanks everybody for coming out, and I hope to see you again next time.